Welcome, everyone, to the Fourth Wall Music Concert, where we aim to take down the walls between the audience and performer. I'm Amy Lay, the Artistic Director of Fourth Wall. And in past seasons, we have featured instruments, a chance to get up close and personal with various instruments. And today I'm super excited to present the saxophone, a very fascinating instrument indeed. This program is in honor of a man who was an inspiration to many of the fabulous saxophone players that you'll see on stage today, Gil Grossuti. We so appreciate all of your support today. It's fantastic to have you here with us, and we would not be able to share this music if it were not for you and for our donors, the Beverly Baker Foundation, Ontario Trillium Foundation, the Ontario Arts Council, the City of Windsor, Alexis Everett Wells, and Asante Wealth Management, and of course the Windsor Symphony Orchestra for hosting us in this beautiful Capitol Theater, who is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. So, as we get moving forward, exploring this incredible journey of the saxophone, often described as the most human of instruments, the saxophone has been stirring up controversy since its inception. Is it an angel, an outlaw, innovator, indecent, voice of the minority, a staple of pop culture? The saxophone is a relatively new instrument, beginning its journey in 1841, when the Belgian instrument maker Adolphe Sax wanted to see what would happen if he put a reed on top of a brass instrument. Even from the start, the saxophone has a turbulent origins. Alphonse Sax himself was a seriously accident-prone person. It's amazing that he even lived long enough to invent this instrument. Apparently, he drank diluted sulfuric acid, thinking it was milk, was poisoned 3 times by varnish, swallowed a needle, and fell from a 3-story window. It's a mother's nightmare. But thank goodness he lived, and against all odds, he survived and went to Paris to show off this new instrument. Some people were thrilled by this. The military bands embraced it, and as did many of well-known classical composers such as Ravel or Mussorgsky, Alban Berg. But the established music industry did not. They felt very threatened by this new instrument and set out to destroy him, stealing his designs, setting his factory on fire, and even attempting to kill him. Unfortunately, Sax was bankrupted twice and ended his life in pretty much destitute conditions. The saxophone, however, had its golden days ahead. In the early 1900s, it was picked up by dance bands and became immensely popular. In fact, in the 1920s, apparently more saxophones were sold than guitars were sold in the 1960s. This popularity was really, of course, wonderful, but it also brought seriously unwanted attention. Though once embraced in Germany, in 1933, the instrument fell into the Nazis' list of degenerate art, and it became extremely dangerous to play the saxophone. The instrument has also been banned by many churches, starting with the Vatican in 1914, perhaps for its having been associated with some of the more suggestive dance moves of the 1900s. Continuing with its life of controversy, in the 1930s, Stalin's Soviet Union also persecuted the saxophone, as it was seen as an embodiment of American culture. If you happened to be a saxophone player in an orchestra in Russia at that time, you had to hand over your instrument and possibly be imprisoned or even exiled. After all of this, however, this incredible instrument prevailed. So today we have 5 incredible local saxophone players, as well as a rhythm ensemble of piano, bass, and drums to share this incredible journey of the saxophone with you today. I'd like to introduce Jeffrey Price, who will tell you a little bit more about the first piece on the program today. Thank you so much.
Gosh, thank you, everyone. Isn't it wonderful to be here supporting live music tonight? As I was driving in from Clarkston, I live in Michigan, I was thinking that in an alternate universe, Winter Wonderland would also be a good piece to start off with tonight. But here we are with some Sangelet for you. Just so you know, Jean-Baptiste Sangelet was a prominent violinist who lived in Paris in the 19th century, and he became friends with Adolphe Sax, and I presume that Adolphe, showed him this brand new invention of the saxophone, and he was quite smitten with it. And he went on to write a great number of pieces for the saxophone. So this is what you're about to hear is one of the first saxophone pieces ever to be written. He also wrote a piece that's really near to my heart, the first saxophone quartet, which I played when I was in grad school with my quartet at the time, and I'm still friends with those guys. So I maybe one day we'll get to play it together. Who knows again? But anyway, we hope you enjoy this first piece, the first movement from his duo concertant for alto and soprano saxophone and piano.
Thank you very much. That was the Duo Concertante by Jean-Baptiste Saint-Gelais. The next piece that we have coming up is written by a man named Eugene Bozza. And Bozza was active pretty well through the entire 1900s. He wrote a lot of wind music, music for wind instruments, despite he himself being a violinist. And a lot of that music was written for saxophone. So the piece that we're about to play is the Andante from Andante and Scherzo. We're just playing the first movement of this. And it's written for saxophone quartet. Now, Bozza, aside from writing all of his music for wind instruments, a lot of that music was for saxophone specifically. His material is seen in a lot of university studios. I myself used one of his pieces, the aria, for alto saxophone and piano as my university audition. And many other saxophone players around the world really are using his material to this day. So this is the Andante from Andante and Scherzo.
Duke Ellington was an American composer, pianist, and band leader, and the innovator of big band jazz. He composed thousands of pieces for stage and screen and the American Songbook throughout his illustrious 50-year career. Some saxophonists in his orchestra went on to become iconic figures themselves and masters of the jazz idiom, such as Ben Webster, Johnny Hodges, and Paul Gonsalves. We're going to do a piece now called Caravan, which he composed with Irvin Mills and Juan Tizol. Yes. The piece is unique because of its exotic flavor. It's a very exotic sounding piece. It was also featured on the 2014 film Whiplash as an important plot element. So we're going to do an arrangement of Caravan by Calvin Custer in more of the funk Latin style. And we encourage you to enjoy the shifting textures and exquisite dissonances featured from the sonorous sounds of the saxophone family playing Caravan.
So I'm next in the program. My name's Will Szeverenyi. I'm going to try not to talk too long because I know my kids right there are in a hurry to get home. So I'm doing a piece by, one of the great things about being a saxophonist is we have so many legends, so many heroes that we get to listen to and follow and learn from. One of my heroes, Joe Henderson, apparently reading, he hung out in Detroit in the 50s, went to the same school that these two fine gentlemen behind me, Mike and Mike, Wayne State, wrote this tune as a teenager. So just a phenomenal musician. This song for me, it's just been really special. Just in that back in the days when I would record jazz off the radio, I didn't know what this song was. And it took me about 4 or 5 years of learning jazz tunes. I'm like, oh, that's the song. So now, I don't know, 30 years later, I get to play it for you fine people. Thank you for being here. This is Recordame by Joe Henderson. guys.
So I just wanted to say a few words before the next two pieces. I hope you're enjoying. I mean, you can see what a diverse and incredible voice that the saxophone has. I thought it was interesting that between the Bozza and the Ellington, there's only 2 years, and yet these two pieces are so different. So the next two pieces on the program are all about this voice that the saxophone has, and it's exploring the way that the saxophone has the ability to surpass the need for words, really. So Hector Berlioz, who's one of the most famous classical composers, Symphonie Fantastique, which Windsor Symphony will be performing actually soon, was a huge proponent for the saxophone. He said that the saxophone is the most human of instruments. It cries, sighs, and dreams. I know of no other instrument that possesses this particular capacity to reach the outer limits of audible sound. So the next piece on the program is by another very famous classical composer, Sergei Rachmaninoff, and it was written shortly after the end of World War I, when Rachmaninoff said that he was terrified of death and was thinking a lot about death. And it was a time when really, how could you describe it with words? So he wrote a piece called Vocalise, which was originally for voice and piano, and there were no words. There was only a syllable for the whole song of the singer's choice. And in this way, he was able to express the feeling of mourning, similar to what's called keening, or just the human outpour of crying. And then after the Vocalise, I'm super excited to present the reading of a poem by the poet Joy Harjo, who was actually the first indigenous American poet to be named the Poet Laureate in 2019. And she herself was a saxophone player as well, and wrote, "Its tendency to be rowdy, edgy, talk too loud, but breathe and blow, and all that love that humans carry makes a sweet, deep sound, and we fly a little bit." So we're going to be presenting the reading of this poem by T.J. Travis, who has contributed to the soul of our community through the arts for many years, so we're very excited to have him here. But before that, let me introduce once again Jeffrey Price and Mike Karloff.
The moon plays horn. Leaning on the shoulders of a dark universe to the infinite glitter of chance. Tonight I watched Bird kill himself larger than real life. I've always had a theory that some of us are born with nerve endings longer than our bodies. Out to here. Farther than his convoluted scales could reach. Those nights he played, did he climb the stairway of forgiveness with his horn? A woman who is always beautiful to strangers. All poets understand the final uselessness of words. We are chords to chords. Two other chords. If we are lucky, to melody. The moon is brighter than anything I can see. When I come out of the theater, then music, then memory of music, or any mere poem. At least I can dance to ornithology or sweet talk beside Charlie's Blues. But inside this poem, I can't play a horn. Hijack a plane to somewhere where music is the place those nerve endings dangle. Each rhapsody embodies counterpoint. And pain stuns the woman in high heels. The man behind the horn sings the heart. To survive is sometimes a leap into madness. The fingers of saints are still hot from miracles. But can they save themselves? Where is the dimension a God lives? Who will take Bird home? I want to see it. I said to the Catalinas, to the Rincons, to anyone listening in the dark. I said, let me hear you by any means. By horn, by fever, by night, even by some poem, attempting flight home.
Thank you. So not to take away from the mystique of improvisation, but where does that come from?
It comes from a lot of different places. Improvisation, the whole nature of it is that you're making it up as you go. And there are many different formats in which we find improvisation. That last piece kind of toes the line between the world of classical improvisation and jazz improvisation. And both of them are a very wide spectrum to begin with. It's really hard to categorize, but the essence of improv is that you're making it up as you go. I personally am more comfortable, as you've heard already a little bit tonight, in the in the jazz idiom of improvising, there's a structure in this kind of jazz and bebop language that once you know the rules of, it's very plain to see if somebody has had a background in jazz improvisation or whether they're improvising without that jazz background, because there's a kind of a codified language that jazz musicians tend to use, and you'll hear ideas that are transcribed from other players in the past and brought through into the current language. Where I find classical improvisation tends to be a little bit more gestural in nature. There is some of that in jazz as well. Free jazz tends to be that gestural kind of improvisation, but that's really where the main difference lies. But having that structure of chord scales is really where I'm most at home. So that was a new experience for me, but a very exciting one nonetheless. What do we have next on the program? Tenor Madness. I'd like to bring Len back to the stage to talk about his next piece that he's going to be playing.
Hello. Enjoying yourselves? Thank you. Thank you. Isn't it funny how here at this iconic theater, usually there's a lot of violins on this stage, and tonight you're getting a lot of sax, so it's good to have your dose of sax and violins here at the Capitol Theater, isn't it? Hey, thank you. When I was 11 years old, I got a record. My parents got me a record called The Blues Tenor Sax, and it featured a whole bunch of iconic tenor sax players and the way they played the blues. And I just wore out the grooves on that record, literally and figuratively. It had so many greats on it, like Arnett Cobb, Buddy Tate, Coleman Hawkins, Houston Person, Eddie Lockjaw Davis, Stanley Turrentine, Willis Jackson, John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins. And it influenced me as a child and up until this day, this record, because I would imitate it when I was a child. Listening to this record, it would just imitate the sound of these tenor players, their rhythmic approach, and the overall bluesy sound just captured me a lot. So I'm going to play kind of a homage to that record, among other things. It's an opening with a little introduction by one of those greats named Willis Jackson that he recorded with brother Jack McDuff, an organ player, called Together Again, and then ending with the famous piece that Sonny Rollins and John Coltrane recorded together called Tenor Madness. Of course, it featured the distinct styles of the tenor players. You have the boisterous sound of John Coltrane mixed with the smooth, wet reed sound of Sonny Rollins. And it's my homage to the great blues players, the tenor players that really knew how to play the blues. So here we go.
Thank you, Len. These guys are all so amazing, aren't they? Yay! And they really have led the program. I also want to say how lucky we are to have such a great rhythm section in the back with Michael Palazzolo on bass, and Vanessa Harnish on the drums, and Mike Karloff, of course, is on the keyboard. So we're moving into the more pop realm with the next piece, and everyone probably knows some music from the 70s, definitely from the 80s, where it was embraced. And then I think they kind of overdid it in the 80s, so it became this stereotype. But I'm excited to see where it goes in the future as well. So we're going to hear a couple pieces in the end of the program having to do with the direction that it's going. But Len, do you want to introduce the I'm 64? Okay.
So, as you probably know, Disney Plus is streaming The Beatles, the remake of The Beatles. It's called Get Back. It's kind of like the Let It Be sessions, re-enhanced. And coincidentally, we're going to play a piece now called When I'm 64, which was actually on the most iconic rock record of all, if not just the Beatle record, but of all time, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Of course, in the later period of the Beatles, the producers, especially George Martin and later Phil Spector, included a lot of horns on their recordings. There's quite a few recordings that featured like a saxophone section to enhance the Beatles songs. It was very common in their later period. So this is an arrangement, kind of, it moves into the, it's more of a jazzy flavor of When I'm 64. Or I'd like to call When I'm 64, of course. Hey, thank you. So, When I'm 64 by the Beatles.
So as you can see, we've gone from the sublime to the ridiculous, and now we're really going to get ridiculous. Some of you may have seen over on the floor over there some pedals, some guitar pedals, some stuff that looks like that, and waiting for Eddie Van Halen to arrive or something. Tonight, I am playing the part of Eddie Van Halen. One of the things that started happening in the 70s is a lot of electronic music started to come out after the 60s. Rock and roll started to really pick up. And then bands, guitarists started using all the overdrive pedals and all sorts of things like that. So in the 70s, in the mid-70s to late 70s, there was some saxophone players that started experimenting with these pedals and seeing if they could make some cool sounds out of the saxophone other than the cool sound that is the saxophone. So tonight I'm going to do my best to play around with some of these pedals. I've got a looper pedal, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a bass line. It's going to loop for me. And then I'm going to stack some chords over top of it. It'll loop over that. And then I'll play a melody, a little bit of a solo. When I get into the solo, I'm going to use a pedal called the Ottawa, and it's basically a wah-wah pedal, and it's going to make some really funky, weird sounds out of the saxophone. So I hope you enjoy this. This is Daft Punk's Get Lucky.
That was cool. I've seen it on YouTube. I've never seen it on in real life. So we're coming to the end of our program, and I just want to thank the musicians here today for their creativity, their bravery, their joy, their talent. This program was theirs. They created most of it. It was their requests, and each one of them put themselves forth to do a solo, which was amazing, and just couldn't be luckier to be in this community where we have all of this talent. So, yeah. And it feels so amazing to be able to present this to a live audience. So thank you so much for braving the cold to be here today. And we hope you will join us for the rest of our interesting season ahead. We have music and healing, birdsong, music and the stars, so lots to look forward to. And we appreciate your support. If we are going this year, in order to be fair, with our online and our live broadcasts as a pay what you can. So we appreciate anything that you can offer. So thank you for that. And we're going to close out with a piece by perhaps the greatest of saxophone players, the one for whom the poem was written, Bird, Charlie Parker. And to tell us a little bit about that, Sebastian. Thank you, everybody.
I want to thank you all once again for being here. We really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun for us to do. You know, it's not often that you can get 5 saxophone players together on a gig anymore and get to play a lot of the quartet and quintet material that we've been able to do tonight. So as exciting as we hope it is to watch, it's equally exciting for us to be able to play, because we really don't get many opportunities to do this kind of stuff anymore. This last tune is a blues by Charlie Parker, Bird, as he was known. And the arrangement is pulled from a group called Super Sax. They were a saxophone quintet active during the 70s and 80s. And one of the big things that they were known for is they took a bunch of Charlie Parker's solos that he played on his tunes, and they voiced them out for 5 saxophones in a soli kind of style. So that's what we're about to play. It's called Cool Blues. Now, I wanted to also make mention, if you've taken a look at the program tonight at all, you will have seen that it's dedicated, I think the dedication reads, in memory of Windsor saxophone great Gil Grasutti. Now, Windsor saxophone great is an understatement, and I want to really impress upon all of you how important Gil was to not only all of us, but to everybody in the music scene in Windsor, saxophone player or otherwise. Gil was really a local legend. He was my first saxophone teacher. He taught many of us on this stage. And his influence spanned generations of musicians in Windsor and the surrounding area, who would then later go on to make fantastic careers for themselves. Gil passed away just last week, I believe, and it was a loss that was really felt throughout the entire community of Windsor. He was a great mentor to me and to a great many musicians, and not even just musicians, but students that he taught throughout his years as a high school teacher as well. So it was a loss that was really felt and will be felt for a long time in Windsor. So we were very honored to pay homage to Gil and everything that he stood for in terms of his phenomenal musicianship, as well as the kind and loving person that he was and will be remembered as. The reason that I'm bringing this all up now is because this chart, Cool Blues, is actually one that he gave to me years ago, just before I stopped taking lessons with him. He gave me a big pile of old Super Sax charts that he just kind of was sitting on, and that I was sitting on for years until we were asked to do this. And I thought, what a great time to pull this out and to play it. So, dedicated to Gil Grasutti, whose family, by the way, many of them are here tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah. So in honor of the local legend Gil Grasutti, here's Cool Blues.